Alpha King bought the Omega no one wanted, then froze when he saw her face. In the heart of the city, beneath towering black stone walls and spires etched with frost, the underworld thrummed with life. Lanterns glowed dimly, casting golden pools of light on the cobblestone streets slick with ice. Tonight was the night of the infamous Omega auction, where the unwanted, the discarded, and the forsaken were sold to the highest bidder. Inside the massive hall, the air was thick with tension and the scent of burning torches. Shadows danced along the walls, stretched and twisted by flickering candlelight. Merchants, nobles, and those who thrived in the darkness whispered among themselves, their eyes darting toward the stage where caged Omegas waited. Each one had a story of pain, survival, or rejection. Some trembled, others stood stoic, hiding fear beneath thin masks of defiance. Among the spectators, Kale, the Alpha King, stood apart. His presence alone demanded attention. Tall and broad-shouldered, draped in a cloak the color of midnight, his piercing silver eyes scanned the hall with the precision of a predator. Rumors about him spread like wildfire across the kingdom. The Alpha King, who ruled with an iron fist, feared and revered in equal measure. He had everything: power, wealth, and influence. Yet there was a cold emptiness behind his gaze, a loneliness that even the grandest throne could not fill. Tonight, Kale had come for a reason. He would choose an Omega, one to stand beside him, one whose loyalty could not be questioned. But he was not here merely for obedience. His instincts whispered of something more, of a presence that could stir the long-frozen parts of his soul. The auctioneer, a tall man in a tattered cloak, raised his voice over the murmurs. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight the most forsaken shall find new masters. Step forward, Omega number 1. A young woman was brought forward, pale and trembling. Her hair was a tangled mess, her eyes downcast. The crowd murmured, some sneering, some pitying. Kale barely glanced at her. She was, as the others, a possession to be bought, an object to fill the king's collection. Then a figure stepped onto the stage and the room fell silent. Alara. She was small, almost fragile in frame, with hair the color of ash and eyes like molten silver, glowing faintly even in the dim light. Her gaze, however, was not fearful. It was steady, almost challenging, and it swept across the hall with an unspoken strength. There was something about her presence that seemed to command attention without a word. Whispers broke out like wildfire. "Who is she? No one wanted her. How is she still here? Look at her. She's not afraid." Kale's breath caught in his throat. Something about her face, it tugged at a memory buried deep in his mind, a memory he had long tried to forget. His hand tightened around the hilt of his dagger at his side, though it was unnecessary. He was the Alpha King. Nothing should faze him. Yet as his eyes met hers, he froze. The auctioneer's voice droned on, oblivious to the tension that had erupted. "Do I hear 10 gold coins?" The room shifted, bids rising and falling like waves against a cliff. Kale's mind, however, was elsewhere, lost in the shadow of recognition. Alara's lips curved slightly, not in fear but in defiance, as if daring someone to claim her. She seemed untouchable, yet fragile, like a flame that could burn both fiercely and be extinguished in a moment. Kale could not look away. When the bidding began in earnest, nobles shouted their offers, some eager, some greedy. Kale's voice cut through the hall like steel. "I will take her." A gasp ran through the crowd. The Alpha King rarely spoke at auctions. His words carried authority and no one dared argue. The gavel fell. Silence followed. Kale's eyes remained locked on Alara, and for the first time in years, the hall's whispers were drowned out by the pounding of a single heartbeat, his. Alara's silver eyes met his, and for a fleeting moment, the weight of unspoken recognition passed between them. Something in her gaze stirred memories of a past Kale had buried, a past filled with laughter, betrayal, and a choice that had left scars on both their souls. The guards moved forward, taking Alara from the stage. She walked with her head held high, as if she alone understood the gravity of the moment. Kale followed, moving through the crowd, ignoring the murmurs and fearful glances. Every step drew him closer to a truth he had not expected to confront tonight. In the king's private chambers, Alara was seated on a chair carved from black ice, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She did not tremble. She did not plead. She only watched Kale with that piercing gaze, as if measuring the man who had bought her fate. Kale remained standing, his eyes locked on her face. You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice a low rumble, heavy with disbelief and emotion he could not name. Alara tilted her head slightly. "Shouldn't I?" she asked, her voice soft yet clear, carrying an unyielding strength. "I am here. You chose me, did you not?" Kale's mind raced. He knew he had chosen her, but the reasons were no longer clear to him. Was it instinct, fate, or something else entirely? Her face, it haunted him, yet stirred something alive within him that he had thought lost forever. The room was silent except for the crackling of the fire in the hearth. Kale approached her cautiously, each step measured. I remember you," he whispered, though the words felt fragile, almost impossible to speak. "But I cannot place when or where." Alara's lips quivered with a half-smile. "Memory is a tricky thing," she said. "Perhaps it is better that you do not remember yet." Kale shook his head, frustration and awe mingling in his expression. He had faced armies, monsters, and curses, but nothing had prepared him for this. The sensation of seeing someone who had once been part of his life and now stood in front of him as an omega no one wanted. He could feel the pull of destiny, the weight of unspoken promises, and the tension of a connection that neither time nor cruelty could sever. Alara stood gracefully, her gaze never leaving his. "Do you intend to keep me here, Alpha King?" she asked. Her voice was calm, yet beneath it he sensed challenge, defiance, and intelligence. She was not a simple prize. She was something else entirely, something dangerous yet necessary. Kale swallowed hard. "I do not know yet," he admitted, the words tasting strange on his tongue. "But you must remain with me, for now." The firelight flickered across her face, highlighting the sharp lines of her features and the subtle strength in her eyes. Kale realized then that she was not just an omega. She was a force, a presence that could shift the balance of power in his kingdom, and perhaps in his heart. The night stretched on, and the palace settled into a tense quiet. Outside, the wind still howled, carrying with it the secrets of the mountains and the echoes of old curses. Within the palace walls, Kale and Alara sat across from each other, both aware of a fragile, unspoken bond forming between them. Kale's thoughts returned again and again to her face. Something about it felt familiar, a memory half forgotten and filled with pain. How could he have lost her? How could fate have brought her to him now, in the shadows of his kingdom, when he had long thought her gone? Alara, meanwhile, studied him quietly. She sensed the conflict beneath his icy exterior, the loneliness, the guilt, and the power. She also sensed the danger. Kale was not a man to be trifled with. And yet there was a flicker of something else in him, a glimmer of the man he might have been before the crown and the curse had hardened him. As the night deepened, the chamber grew colder, though the fire burned bright. Kale finally rose, pacing the room. "Tell me, who are you?" he demanded, his voice both harsh and trembling with emotion. Alara's lips curved into a small, enigmatic smile. "I am the Omega no one wanted," she said softly. "But I am also the one you have been searching for, even if you do not yet remember it." Kale froze. The words hit him like a dagger of ice, sharp and undeniable. His heart raced, caught between fear, recognition, and longing. The Omega he had thought lost, the one whose face haunted his dreams, was here, alive, before him. The wind outside screamed louder, as if the night itself had taken notice. And in that frozen silence, Kale realized that the world he thought he controlled had shifted. He could not look away from her. He could not escape the past that had returned to claim him. And in that moment, Kale understood the truth. Nothing would ever be the same again. Cliffhanger. Kale's silver eyes locked on hers, and for the first time in his life he did not know what to do next. "Why are you here?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Alara's eyes glimmered in the firelight, and a faint smile curved her lips. "Because it is time you remembered," she said. The palace was quiet but not peaceful. Its black stone walls and towering spires gleamed under the moonlight, frost clinging to every corner as if the cold itself had claimed the building. Inside, the corridors smelled of burning wood and cold stone. Shadows stretched along the walls, moving like living things. Kale walked beside Alara, his expression unreadable, his silver eyes flickering between curiosity, wariness, and something deeper he refused to name. Alara remained silent, her steps measured and careful. She had been brought here as an omega no one wanted, yet the air around her seemed to hum with a quiet strength, a sense that she belonged to no one but herself, and perhaps, by fate, to Kale. The palace servants avoided their path, bowing low or scurrying away. They feared Kale as they always did, yet they also sensed the unusual tension that clung to him when he looked at Alara. It was not the same fear or command he usually projected. This was something personal. Kale led her into a chamber overlooking the frozen gardens. The moonlight spilled across the floor in pale, silver beams. He gestured for her to sit. She did gracefully, her hands folded in her lap, eyes observing the room but never leaving him. "I should warn you," Kale said, his voice low and rough. "This palace is no place for the faint of heart. Secrets live here. Shadows watch. And He paused, unsure how to continue. The words that would have fallen easily before now caught in his throat. "I am not as I once was." Alara tilted her head slightly, studying him. "Are you ever truly the person you were before?" she asked softly. "Or is everyone just a mask they wear?" Kale's jaw tightened. He had built walls around himself that no one had ever breached. Yet her question pierced them, subtle but relentless. He moved to the window, looking out at the frost-covered gardens. The moonlight reflected off the ice, creating patterns like broken glass. "Masks," he admitted quietly, "are all I have left. And yet you do not fear me." Alara's eyes softened just a fraction. "I have learned that fear is useless. It makes you small. I do not wish to be small." Her words struck something deep within Kale. She was bold, unbroken, and yet fragile in ways he could sense but not touch. She reminded him of someone he had lost long ago, someone whose laughter had filled the halls of his childhood, before betrayal and tragedy had hardened him. "You remind me of," he began, but stopped. The memory clawed at the edges of his mind, teasing him with faces and voices that should have been forgotten. "No, it cannot be." Alara leaned forward slightly, curiosity flickering in her silver eyes. "Remind you of what?" Kale turned to face her, his expression fierce and vulnerable all at once. "Of someone I thought I had lost, someone I should never have known." Her eyes widened, but she said nothing. She waited, sensing that the moment required patience. The silence between them was thick, filled with unspoken truths and memories too painful to name. The quiet was broken by a knock at the door. A servant entered, bowing low. "Your Majesty, a message." He handed Kale a sealed scroll, the wax stamped with the mark of the Council of Shadows. Kale broke the seal with a swift motion, scanning the words quickly. "Alara," he murmured, his eyes narrowing, "this is why I must keep you close. The Council knows who you are, or at least they suspect. They would see you destroyed if they could." Alara's brow furrowed. "Destroyed? For what reason?" Kale's gaze darkened. "For the power you carry, even unknowingly. They do not understand it and they fear it." "You are more than an Omega, Alara, perhaps far more than you realize." She swallowed hard. The weight of his words pressed down on her, but instead of fear, she felt a spark of resolve. "Then I will not hide. I will not be afraid. If my power can help me survive, or even help you, I will not deny it." Kale studied her, his silver eyes searching her face. He had seen defiance before, but hers was different. It was quiet, unshakable, yet respectful. She did not seek to challenge him nor to please him. She simply existed in her own strength. And for the first time, Kale felt something unfamiliar: hope. The days that followed were tense. Alara explored the palace, noting the hidden corridors, the frost-covered statues, and the silent watchers in the shadows. Kale watched her, often from a distance, his mind torn between the memories her presence stirred and the growing awareness that she might be the key to his redemption. One evening, he found her standing by the frozen fountain in the garden. Moonlight danced across the ice, reflecting her pale face and the fire in her silver eyes. Kale stepped beside her silently, his usual authority softened by a fragile vulnerability. "You move as if you belong here," he said quietly. "Yet you are not of this place. Not really." Alara glanced at him. Perhaps belonging is a choice, and perhaps some places only reveal themselves when the right person is present. Kale's chest tightened. He had ruled with fear for decades, yet with her, he felt compelled to be more than the Alpha King. He felt compelled to be human. "You have grown stronger than I imagined," he said, almost to himself. "But there is still pain in you, a shadow I cannot reach." Alara's gaze softened. "We all carry shadows, Kale. Some we hide, some we embrace. The question is whether we let them control us or whether we rise above them." Her words struck him deeply. She did not merely speak of survival. She spoke of understanding, of strength born from suffering. And Kale realized that she might be the only one who could see past the walls he had built around himself. The moment was interrupted by a sudden knock at the chamber door. A hooded figure entered without waiting for invitation, the room's shadows twisting around them unnaturally. The figure's voice was low, almost a growl. "The council knows you are here, Kale, and the Omega you claim is of greater consequence than you realize. She carries a fate none of you can escape." Kale's hand went instinctively to his sword, but he did not draw it. Instead, he stepped protectively in front of Alara, his gaze icy and unyielding. "Leave," he commanded, "or you will answer to me." The figure paused, then vanished into the shadows, leaving a lingering chill in the room. Alara shivered slightly, but only for a moment. Kale's hand brushed lightly against her arm, a gesture of both warning and comfort. "You see," he murmured, his voice tense. "Even the shadows fear what you carry." Alara's eyes met his, and for the first time a flicker of understanding passed between them. She did not fear him, and he did not fear her. But both understood the danger that now hovered over them like a dark cloud, threatening to shatter the fragile connection forming between them. In the days that followed, Kale and Alara navigated their new reality. He trained her, not merely in obedience, but in understanding the strange powers that lingered within her. He found himself drawn to her resilience, her courage, and the quiet wisdom in her eyes. She challenged him, not openly, but subtly, forcing him to confront the parts of himself he had long tried to bury. Alara, for her part, began to see Kale not just as a ruler or a captor, but as a man torn between duty, power, and something much deeper. She sensed his loneliness, his guilt, and the fragments of a past he had never shared with anyone. And in those moments, the connection between them grew, a bond forged not by ownership, but by shared pain, understanding, and the faint promise of redemption. One night, as snow fell silently over the palace, Alara approached Kale in the hall. "Why did you buy me?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. Kale's eyes flickered with the ghost of a smile. "Because I could not bear the thought of anyone else having you. Not yet." Alara's gaze softened, but she did not answer immediately. She sensed his struggle, the inner battle between the Alpha King he had to be and the man he could still become. "And if I am no one, if I am just a shadow of what I was meant to be?" Kale stepped closer, his silver eyes burning with intensity. "You are not no one," he said firmly. "You are everything I have been searching for, even if I did not know it at the time, and I will not let anyone take that from you." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. The snow outside fell heavier, the world outside the palace fading into quiet, white oblivion. And in that silence, the unspoken bond between Kale and Alara deepened, fragile yet undeniable. But the peace would not last. A sharp knock echoed through the hall, followed by hurried footsteps. A servant burst into the room, pale and trembling. "Your Majesty, Lady Alara, the council, they have sent word. They know where she is. They are coming." Kale's silver eyes darkened, a mixture of anger, fear, and determination. He turned to Alara, his voice low and commanding. "Prepare yourself. We have little time. Whatever you are, whatever power you hold, you must be ready." Alara's eyes met his, unwavering. "I am ready," she said, "if you are with me." Kale's jaw tightened. He had always fought alone, but now he realized he would not fight alone. Cliffhanger, outside the palace, the wind howled like a warning. Shadows stirred. And in the darkness, figures moved with purpose, coming to reclaim the Omega the Alpha King had dared to take. Kale's hand brushed lightly against Alara's and he whispered, "No one will take you, not while I breathe." But even as he spoke, he could feel the storm approaching, one that might destroy them both. Snow fell thick and slow, covering the palace grounds like a white shroud. The wind whispered through frozen trees, carrying something darker than cold, an old magic that remembered names, faces, and broken promises. From the highest tower, Kale watched the horizon. Torches burned along the walls below, their flames struggling against the wind. His soldiers were ready, but Kale knew steel alone would not stop what was coming. The Council of Shadows did not march with armies. They came with secrets, curses, and truths that cut deeper than blades. Behind him, Alara stood quietly. She wore no crown, no armor, yet the air around her felt different now. Stronger, awake. Something inside her had begun to stir since the Council's warning, as if a long-sleeping part of her soul had finally opened its eyes. "You should not be here," Kale said without turning. "If they breach the walls, I will not hide," Alara replied calmly. "Not again." Kale turned then, studying her face. The fear he once expected was gone. In its place was resolve, not reckless courage, but something steadier, something earned. "You do not know what they will do," he said. "I know," she answered softly. "They already did it once." Those words struck him hard. Kale stepped closer. "What do you remember?" Alara looked away, her gaze drifting toward the frozen forest beyond the walls. Fragments, pain. A fire that burned without warmth, and a voice telling me I was dangerous, that I had to be forgotten. Kale's chest tightened. He remembered that fire, not from dreams but from truth. Before he could speak, a horn sounded below. Low, deep. A warning. The council had arrived. Black shapes emerged from the snow beyond the gates, figures cloaked in shadow, their faces hidden, their presence bending the air around them. The torches flickered as they approached, as if afraid. Kale descended the tower stairs with Alara beside him. Soldiers lined the walls, but no one moved. Fear pressed down on them all, heavy and cold. The gates did not break. They opened. A voice echoed across the courtyard, calm and ancient. "Alpha King," the voice said, "you stand on cursed ground." Kale stepped forward alone, his cloak snapping in the wind. "You were warned never to cross my borders again." A tall figure stepped out from the shadows. Their hood lowered just enough to reveal pale eyes glowing faintly blue. "We come for what was stolen," the figure said. "The Omega," Alara moved beside Kale. "I was not stolen." The council members' gaze snapped to her. "So," they murmured, "you live." A ripple passed through the others. Kale felt it then, the shift, recognition, fear. "You know her," Kale said. "We know what she is," the figure replied, "or what she will become if allowed." Alara's voice remained steady. "Then tell me." The council member hesitated. "Long ago," they said slowly, "a child was born during the eclipse winter, marked not by rank but by balance. Alpha and Omega, strength and mercy, fire and frost." Kale's breath caught. The memory struck him fully now. A girl in the snow, silver eyes, a promise he failed to keep. "You were meant to unite what we broke." the figure continued. Instead, you were hidden, erased, sold. Alara's hands trembled slightly, but she did not step back. Kale moved in front of her without thinking. You will not touch her, the figure's gaze hardened. You already did, once, when you let her go. Silence fell. Alara looked at Kale sharply. What do they mean? Kale's voice came rough. I thought you were dead. He closed his eyes. I was young, he said. Not king yet. I tried to protect you by sending you away. I trusted the wrong people. When I returned, everything was gone. They told me you never existed. Alara's chest ached. You believed them. I had to, he whispered, or I would have burned the world. The council raised a hand. And now she returns, as prophecy demands. No, Alara said. I returned because I survived. The wind roared suddenly, circling her. Snow lifted from the ground, spinning like white embers. The guards stumbled back. Kale turned in shock. Alara, she gasped as pain surged through her, sharp but controlled. Light flickered beneath her skin, faint but real. I can feel it, she said. The curse. It is not mine, but it is tied to me. The council stepped back. She awakens, one whispered. Kale reached for her, gripping her hands. Stay with me. Her eyes met his. I am not afraid. The lead council member raised their staff. Dark symbols burned into the stone beneath Alara's feet. The curse binds choice, they said. To break it, one must sacrifice what they rule. Kale froze. What does that mean? It means, the figure said calmly, the Alpha King must choose, power or her. Alara looked at him, shock flickering across her face. Kale, no, he did not hesitate. I choose her. The words rang across the courtyard like a vow. The ground cracked. Light and shadow collided as the curse reacted. A blast of force threw everyone back. Kale shielded Alara with his body as the world seemed to tear open. When the light faded, the council was gone. The courtyard lay in ruins. Alara collapsed. Kale caught her, lowering her gently to the frozen stone. Alara, look at me. Her breathing was shallow, but she smiled faintly. You chose. Always, he said fiercely. I will tear down the crown itself if I must. Her eyes fluttered. The curse is not finished. What do you mean? It wants balance, she whispered. Not death, not control, but truth. Her hand tightened around his. And it remembers everything. Her eyes closed. Kale lifted her into his arms, fear clawing at him harder than any blade. He carried her inside as the snow fell heavier, as if the sky itself mourned. Deep beneath the palace, something ancient stirred. A power older than kings, older than crowns, and it had finally found her again. Cliffhanger. Kale watched in horror as an ancient voice echoed through the chamber, unseen and unstoppable. Balance has returned. The final choice approaches. Its walls were carved from black stone that seemed to breathe with ancient memory. Symbols glowed faintly along the floor, rising and falling like a slow heartbeat. In the center of the room, Alara lay on a stone platform, pale and still. Soft light traced the marks on her skin, symbols of balance, memory, and fate. Kale stood beside her, unmoving. He had not slept. He had not left. The Alpha King who once ruled through fear now watched over one fragile life as if the world itself rested on her breath. An old voice echoed through the chamber again, not loud, not cruel, only certain. The final choice nears. Kale clenched his fists. Show yourself. The shadows shifted, folding inward. From them emerged a figure made of light and darkness woven together. It had no crown, no weapon, no face, only presence. I am the balance, it said. I am what remains when power fails. Kale stepped forward. Then take me instead. The figure tilted its head. You misunderstand. This is not a punishment. Alara stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, silver light flickering within them like dawn through frost. Kale, he rushed to her side. I am here. She smiled weakly. You always are. The balance spoke again. Alara carries what the world forgot, a bond meant to heal what kings shattered, but balance demands truth, not rule, not dominance. Alara pushed herself upright with effort. Then speak the truth. The light around her grew warmer. The curse was born when power chose control over care, the balance said. It ends only when power chooses to release. Kale's breath caught. Release what? He asked. The answer came softly, but it shook the room. The throne. Silence followed. Kale felt the weight of centuries pressed down on him, the crown, the bloodlines, the fear that held the kingdom together. Without him, chaos could follow, war, collapse. Alara looked at him, searching his face. Kale, you do not have to. Yes, he said quietly. I do, he took her hand. I was never meant to rule through fear, he continued. I thought strength meant control, but all it did was freeze the world around me. He looked at the balance. If I step down, will she live? The figure nodded. And so will the kingdom, changed. But alive. Alara's eyes filled with tears. You would give up everything, he smiled gently. I already have everything. He pressed his forehead to hers. You, the chamber trembled. The symbols burned brighter. Above them, the palace shook as frost cracked along its towers. Outside, snow began to melt not into water but into mist, lifting into the sky like breath released after a long silence. Kale stood tall. I release the crown, he said clearly. I release the throne. I choose balance over rule. The crown, though unseen, shattered. A wave of light exploded outward, sweeping through the palace, the city, the land. Soldiers dropped their weapons. Bells rang without hands. The frozen river beyond the walls began to flow again. Alara cried out, not in pain but in release. The marks on her skin dissolved into soft light, sinking into her chest, her heart. The curse unraveled, thread by thread, returning to the world what it had stolen choice. When the light faded, the chamber was quiet. The balance was gone. Kale collapsed to his knees. Alara caught him. They laughed softly, breathless, overwhelmed. It's over, she whispered. Yes, he replied, it is. Days passed. The kingdom did not fall, it breathed. A council was formed, not of shadows but of voices. Leaders chosen by trust, not fear. Kale did not sit among them. He walked the city instead, without guards, without crown. Some bowed, some stared, some smiled. Alara walked beside him. She was no longer called Omega. She was called Flamebearer. Spring returned slowly. Flowers bloomed through snow-melted ground. Children laughed where silence once ruled. One evening, Kale and Alara stood on the same battlements where frost once ruled. The sunset painted the sky gold and violet. Do you regret it? Alara asked gently. Kale shook his head. I regret only that I did not choose sooner. She leaned into him. And now, he said, I live, she smiled. With me, always. Below them, the city glowed, not with fire or fear, but with light. The winter was over, not because it was defeated, but because it was understood. And in that understanding, love had rewritten fate itself. Final note / emotional close, legends would speak of the Alpha King who broke his own crown. Of the Omega no one wanted who carried the balance of the world. But the truth was simpler. Two broken souls chose each other. And in doing so, they saved everything.